Good evening, chaps. We have a great show for you tonight. Um, so I guess let's get right into it. Um, oh, by the way, I don't know what's up with my table. It keeps looking weird in the YouTube video. It looks perfectly fine when I'm doing my homework. It looked perfectly fine when I was doing my homework earlier today. But now, for some reason, when I start the stream and I look on it on YouTube, it looks weird. So I don't know what's up with that. I don't know what's up with my computer or my camera or my table or why my table looks weird in my YouTube videos. But moving on, I guess a problem for another day, perhaps. Um, but moving on to the news. So Ramben Barak, the ex-Mossad deputy director, um, said that Palestinians should go around the world. He said the Palestinians are being kicked out of their home, so Canada should accept them and they should be spread out throughout the whole world, were his words. It doesn't surprise me that the Zionists and the globalists are suggesting the solution to the problem, suggesting that since we're having non-whites get massacred by them, the best solution to this issue is to put the non-whites in white countries to lower the percentage of white people and help turn white people into minorities. It's not surprising that they're suggesting this. So here's what's going on. This problem is a problem caused by Jews, but they're saying this Jewish caused problem should be handled by white people. And this happens all the time. So Israel is always causing problems ever since the 40s. They've been doing terrible things to the Palestinians. But they demand aid, financial aid from countries like America, England, Germany, to pay for it, to pay for them to get big militaries and big weapons and big scary soldiers to defend them from the Palestinians, from the Arabs, from the terrorist organizations because of what they did. So that's an example of Jews starting a problem and then demanding white people help them fix their problem, deal with the headache and the suffering that the problem they are responsible for is causing, taking the responsibility off themselves from their problem, putting it on the shoulders of white people. Another example of this, Israel angered Egypt, and then Egypt was going to go to war with Israel, but America started paying Egypt money to not go to war with Israel. So right now, Israel is the number one country, like as far as foreign aid from the U.S., and Egypt is the number two country. So we give the most amount of foreign aid to Israel and the second most to Egypt. This is money basically bribing Egypt to not go to war with Israel. So this is another problem, another example, or I guess problem, of Jews causing a problem and then making white people solve the problem for them. They angered Egypt. They made Egypt want to go to war with them. And then they demanded white people use their hard-earned money to make the problem disappear, to just pay the problem away. Right now, so Israel has been doing terrible things to the Palestinians, like flattening Palestinian apartment buildings full of Palestinians without their consent to build freeways on that land. So the Palestinians responded by doing a terrorist attack against Jews and massacring Jews, slaughtering Jews. And now Israel is saying, we need more aid from the US. We need more nukes from the US. We need more money from the US. and America saying, okay, we'll give Israel more money to deal with the terrorists that they brought on themselves. That's not to say I support what Hamas did at that music festival. That's not to say I endorse it. I think it was morally reprehensible what Hamas did on that musical concert. And I think it was wrong, I think. But that doesn't change the fact that even though it was wrong for Hamas to respond that way, it was still started by Jews. And Jews are demanding that white people fix the problem that they started. So we're seeing this right now, too. The Jews are kicking Palestinians out of their home. They're blowing up Palestinians' homes. And now they're demanding that white people suffer the burden of that. It's just a constant struggle with these globalists. These globalists and social Marxists just never give us a break, do they? The Israeli Heritage Minister, Lili Yawol, I don't like this guy, so I'm not going to try to pronounce his name correctly. I think it's Eli Yahoo, but hate him, not going to pronounce his name correctly. So he's a politician, or I guess Israeli Heritage Minister, and says we should nuke Gaza. There was this woman who I talked about on one of my previous shows who said we should nuke the Gaza Strip, and now another person is saying that. So they're just being openly genocidal. Again, imagine my shock that they're doing it again. That's just what they've been doing forever at this point. Something else I thought was interesting. So all throughout England, I think it's mainly in London, but I guess all throughout England, at least in the big cities, they put up these posters of missing Israelis, or I guess missing Jews from Palestine. And a bunch of people were tearing them down. But so they made a PSA about trying to get people to stop tearing down those posters. So right now, you could have used the money to make that PSA to help save the Palestinians, since 3 times as many Palestinians have been killed by Israel as how many Jews died in the music concert. So they're suffering more. So you could have used the money to help them. You could have used the money to help stop white people from being replaced in their own homes. You could have helped all the homeless people laying on the street. You could have helped make your military stronger, but instead you decided to use it to complain about people tearing down the posters. But here's another annoying thing. In the poster, it was these blonde young white women. These blonde young white women were tearing down the posters. But I've seen dozens of videos of people filming people tearing them down. And in every single one of them, it was Arabs. I'm not saying that like in a racist way. I'm just saying what I saw. In every video, it was Arabs tearing down the poster. But in the PSA, it was blonde white women. What's up with that? So they're very clearly trying not to offend. This is another example of snowflake mentality in our politics. So the Arabs are being genocided in Palestine. The Arabs are angry about that, so they're destroying things. The English government wants to stop having their stuff get destroyed. So then they say, these white blonde women are destroying stuff. because they want to get people to stop destroying stuff. But if they say these Arabs are destroying stuff, then they're scared to get called racist because they're scared of Arabs, the Arabs they let into their own country. So there's so many things wrong with that. I don't even know where to start. I to be honest, I sympathize with what those Arabs were doing because Arabs are being slaughtered in the Middle East. So to be moaning about Jews, even though the Jews are the ones doing the slaughtering in the Middle East, I could understand why if I was Arab, I'd probably, to be honest, if I was Arab, I might be going out destroying stuff because it's so, I shouldn't be laughing and smiling, but it's so rough right now that, to be honest, if I was Arab, I probably would be tearing down the posters and smashing stuff and destroying stuff in pro-Palestine protests. Not an endorsement of crime, obviously. I'm white, so it's not an endorsement of crime. But then the English government wants them to cut that out, which is reasonable. If I was a government, I wouldn't want my citizens destroying my stuff. But then they won't actually say it how it is. They put up these blonde white women tearing down the posters. It was a really awful PSA. It was like, oh, you can go home to bed right now, but they can't. Do you know who can't go to bed right now? Do you know who can't go to home right now? The Palestinians who were blown to bits by Israeli missiles, by Israeli bombs. That's who can't go to home right now. So shut up. Shut up. Go kill yourself, you English propagandists. You Zionist shell. I saw this this quite funny video where in England, unlike in France where they went full where they went full Shabbos Goyim and banned pro-Palestinian protests. In England, you're still legally allowed to protest for Palestine. And they were but some conservatives would come in there dressed in like English flags and saying like, "Oh, England first." And a lot of the pro-Palestinian protesters were like pushing them around and stuff. But there was this really funny video where there was one of them doing like the England first sign, and then this this high-pitched voiced Antifa freak came up to him and was like, "You're transphobic. This man," because he was saying it to other, "this man thinks that children shouldn't be allowed to be trans." But he was at a pro-Palestine protest, and he was surrounded by Palestinian, well, I guess not Palestinian, but Arab Muslims. And then the Arab Muslims all jumped on him and were like, "No, kids should not be trans. Being trans is wrong. Being trans is against Allah. If you're trans, you go to hell." And then he ran away like a little girl. So I guess hurrah to the English patriot and our based Muslim sisters standing up against the transvestites. English patriots, conservative English patriots, and our Muslim sisters standing up against the transvestites together, against that freak. it was a really great clip. You should check it out. The U.S. military recently released this ad. So, for those who have been living on Mars for the last few years, the U.S. military has been releasing all of these cucked, awful um, campaign ads where they had like this little girl from California with two mothers um, talking about how much she loves lesbians and how great it is to be a lesbian. And now I'm in the military. Isn't the military swell? Um, Lesbians, come join the military. Um, and then there's another one where there was this black woman who was saying like, black women, women of color, please join the military. Trans people of color, please join the military. And they would have, there was this one, it was, I can't remember it exactly. It was, I think there was like the U.S. military posted a helmet with rainbow on it. I think there even have been some U.S. military bases that have flown rainbow flags, if I'm not correct. But there's a lot of people in the military who suggested doing that. So the U.S. military has been a lot more open about how awful it is recently than it has been historically to the general public. And no one wants to join the U.S. military. Almost no one is in the U.S. military. The U.S. military is getting more funding than it ever has before. So they have all these fancy tanks and fancy missiles, all these nukes, endless machine guns, endless bullets, all this armor. But no one wants to join because no one wants to join the military because more people than in a long time have woken up to the fact that the U.S. military is horrible. Both liberals and conservatives, both leftists and right-wingers like myself, have woken up to the fact that the U.S. military is awful, disgusting, and evil, and stands for the extermination of white people. However, they recently released a ad campaign, and it was all white men in this plane jumping out to go parachuting to, I guess, kill people. And it was sort of like, there's still a place for white men. We very clearly know what's going on here. No one will join the U.S. military because everyone hates the U.S. military, as they should. So they're trying to get white men to join. No, we're not joining you. Why would we want to join an organization that hates us? Why would we want to join an organization that wants to exterminate our race? Why would we want to join an organization that wants to have our race replaced, that wants to replace white people? That's what the U.S. military stands for. That's what the U.S. military has always standed for since the U.S. had a military in 1776. And more people than ever, or at least more people, I think I'm going to say it, more people than ever have woken up to the fact that that's true. That's what right-wingers have woken up to. A lot of leftists won't join the military because of nonsense that isn't true. But either way, luckily, and this is a wonderful thing, this is something we should be celebrating, the military can't get anyone to join it. So they have all this stuff and all this money, but nowhere near enough people. Huzzah. We should want the U.S. military to crumble. We should want the U.S. military to fall apart. We should celebrate every time the U.S. loses in a war. I want that time the Taliban was able to defeat the U.S., I want 100 more of those. I want Russia to shred Ukraine and the Americans in Ukraine. I want China to shred every American in Taiwan. I want Palestinians to shred every American troop in Palestine. You know why? Because America will learn to be less like America and more like them, more based and red pilled. So it has recently come out that that transvestite mass shooter that shot up a church um, released a memoir where they were being anti-white racist. They referred to their victims as crackers and complained about kids in fancy khakis and blonde hair. Um, and the mass shooter made it clear that they hated white people and they were targeting this church because it was almost all white people. They hate white people. So they're just repeating what the mainstream media has been saying for decades. For decades, the mainstream media has been saying white people are the devil, white people are evil, white people shouldn't exist, white people should be ashamed of themselves, white people aren't cool, white people are lame, F white people. That's what the mainstream media has been saying for decades at this point. So the mass shooter was simply taking that to heart and acting on what the mainstream media wants to happen, acting on what the people who run our country, the media, Hollywood, and the banks want to see happen. White people get slaughtered. No one talked about this because the mainstream media wants to be subtle with its very extreme anti-white racism. America wants to be subtle with its very extreme anti-white racism. But more and more people are waking up to the fact that it's there and it needs to be removed. Okay, so wasn't a very long video, but I think I'm just going to call it good for tonight and talk more about this sort of stuff in another video because I'm getting pretty tired. Have a wonderful night. God bless.